13 billion miles away, a small dwarf planet located in the Kuiper Belt is the farthest object humans have ever discovered. This world made of nitrogen ices is one of the top coldest places in our solar system, with an average surface temperature of negative 250 degrees. This place is the reddest of all of planets. Meet Sedna. Standing on Sedna's surface would be a very bumpy ride, and stars would appear everywhere. And here, you could look at the sun and not feel any pain. It would be like looking at a half moon, but a bit dimmer. But what if I told you humans could inhabit Sedna until the sun dies? The end of our solar system is all based in theories and guesses. Like that Jupiter, Saturn, or Uranus's moons could no longer be too cold for human life to exist. But it's crazy to think that someday our planet will become a part of the sun as it turns into a red giant. But as space technology gets better over the years, the more likely chance we are to inhabit all planets, including small asteroids, moons, and so on. So soon, maybe we'll get to Sedna as it gets closer to the sun. Year 0. The world around you would be cold and damp. Nothing would be visible due to Sedna's distance from the sun. Not even your hands could be visible standing on Sedna. But say we shine an extra sun on Sedna's surface, so we don't live eternally in darkness. As you descend on Sedna's surface, you would see methane, nitrogen ices with tholins. Although this is all speculation, this is what we think is on Sedna's surface right now. About 500 million years later, the sun would appear 1% bigger and sunlight on Sedna would rise to 0.5%. But still, Sedna would remain at its same surface temperature. 1 billion years after landing on Sedna, the sun would appear 6% bigger, and Sedna's surface temperature would rise to negative 345 degrees. And at the same time, you'd be looking at the Earth's oceans boil away as it gets closer to its home star. About 3 billion years later, the sky would become 0.45% brighter, but the sun would appear as bright as looking at the Earth from Saturn. The same would appear for 4 billion and 2 billion. Finally, 4.5 billion years from now, the sun will appear red, as it goes into its last stage before becoming another white dwarf star. The sun would appear as bright as looking at the sun from Uranus. And a few billion years later, you'd be looking at the engulfing of Mercury and Venus. 100 million years after the sun engulfed Mercury and Venus, it would pulse back a little, but still eat Earth sometime soon. Finally, about 5 billion years later, the Earth would be eaten by the sun, and the sun's last stage would end. Finally, 1 billion years after the sun turned into a red giant, everything would go dark. But the only thing that would light up the sky would be our sun as a white dwarf star. It would be so tiny, it would be looking like Ceres, the star from Earth. And now Sedna, an already lonely planet, would become lonelier and drift throughout the darkness of space. Finally, 1 billion years later, nothing would light up the sky. Not even a flashlight could light up the ground. The reason it went dark is when a white dwarf star cools, it turns into a brown dwarf. And as Sedna would leave our solar system, Kuiper Belt objects would be flying everywhere. But even Kuiper Belt objects would not be visible in the sky. All that would be visible is the lonely darkness and coldness of space. And that will forever be what the evolution of standing on Sedna would be like. Sedna's surface temperature would be unimaginably cold, at negative 100 octillion degrees. If you were to land on Sedna's surface, your spacesuit would freeze almost immediately. And right here would be the end of Sedna's adventure. A cold world will someday get even colder, but for now, we won't know what will happen to Sedna trillions of more years from now, and that's why Sedna will most definitely never be reached by humanity.